Now, today's meeting is going to be the last meeting of the year. This is a good thing. We've had a very good year and we've had a lot of progress. Though, of course, we are also going to have to think about what comes next. What do we do next year? Let's dial in to the news and so on as quickly as possible. I'm going to ping the China work group and see if they want to join as well. But while we're waiting for any stragglers, I'll just make a note, as usual, that this meeting is under the Linux Foundation antitrust policy. The full policy can be found on our website. And of course, if you have any questions, if you're from a Linux Foundation member company, you can contact our counsel, Andy Updegrove. The meeting we have today has a regular agenda, and the version of the agenda for today is pretty simple. We're going to have a look at our news. We're going to have a look at the work around our standards and core material. We're going to give an any other business moment, and then we'll close the meeting. Given that this is the last meeting of the year, the focus won't be on actually editing our standards, it'll be on describing the work around them. So what's going on? What's happening in our project? The main order of news, the main item, is the one we have been waiting and signaling for a while, and that is related to our ISO standard for security. So going into our news section, having a look, we'll see that our ISO standard for security is finally and formally published on the ISO website. We submitted it into the JTC1 pass transposition process at the very beginning of the year, the very start of January. It had gone to Joint Development Foundation the month prior in December. We had a ballot process in ISO to vote on the transposition for the de facto standard to turn into a formal ISO standard. That voting process was concluded in June of this year. There were a few editorial comments, a few typos and things to fix, but we had passed the ballot, and we did those typo comments and fixes with a revision in July, and then in August we were waiting to be published. Now, previously, when we made the ISO 5230 for license compliance, we got published a couple of weeks later. In the case of this one, we were waiting for months. It wasn't because of any issue with our ISO standard. We were in a publication queue. ISO was busy. Honestly, it took a lot longer than I thought. We're, over 4 months of waiting to get published on the website. But here we are. So you can buy our standard on the ISO website. You should be also able to get it for free off their Pass Standards page, and you can get it for free from our website. This is actually the first OpenChain call where we're talking about the formal publication. So in theory, then, you are now at the first news item about this being published. And you will be seeing over the next couple of days us talking across media and so on, explaining that people can download the standard from the ISO website. Does it actually change the momentum? Not really. We've had organizations adopting the standard for a while, adopting it as a de facto standard, then adopting it as a draft international standard in ISO. So of course, it's great to have the ISO number, but it doesn't change the fact that the standard has been available and companies have been adopting it for a while. What it does change is the scale of companies that are likely to be in a position to adopt it in the future. So a very quick example, the first company to announce adoption of the ISO variant of the standard, that's earlier this month, was Kakao Bank in the financial sector. So they already knew ISO IEC 18974 2023 was complete and coming. So they adopted against the ISO version. Other companies in regulated will find it increasingly easy to do that as opposed to using the de facto version, the thing that became the ISO standard. The de facto version is OpenChain Security Assurance Specification 1. It was adopted by companies like LG Electronics and BlackBerry, and it will probably be used by a lot more companies. It's functionally identical to the ISO standard, but it's not the ISO number, and that can matter a lot. Anyway, that's out, that's done. That will be our Christmas present to ourselves. And then next year, with 2 ISO standards published in the market, we'll be looking at where do we go next. And that will start with an AI compliance study group. They're currently talking about meeting every 2 weeks. I'm going to check in and see if they're sure about that schedule. That's a pretty intense schedule, but it is indicative that a lot of people want to talk about AI. They want to talk about AI compliance. And your favorite project in the world, OpenChain, will be addressing that in the context of the global supply chain. Now, onward to the nitty-gritty, the work we've been doing. For those of you who are new to the call, you should be aware that we've been working on improvements for the future. The community adds ideas, refines the language, and those drafts then go forward into something called the steering committee. We have actually got a ton of ideas about what licensing and security can become in the future. So, what happens with that? Well, in total, the community has been working on an update to the license compliance standard, an ISO standard, update to the security standard, also an ISO standard, and ideas about contribution process management and SBOM quality analysis. Now, the contribution stuff and the SBOM quality wasn't ready. So the stuff that went before the steering committee was, do we update license compliance? Do we update security assurance? The steering committee gets basically a formal submission from the community. The steering committee, made up of our governing board and the chairs of the spec work group, then have a look and provide guidance. So they focused on ideas to update ISO 5230 and ISO 18974. Where the steering committee went with this was to look at the proposed updates. So there was justification. This, in the case of license compliance, this was completed in 2019, became ISO standard in 2020, and therefore has 4 years of feedback. We're in a 1-year review period where we looked at feedback and we got new feedback and we made a new draft. Steering committee got that. If you want to see the draft versus the current version, you can do so on our website. Links and QR code for your convenience on this slide. These slides will be, of course, available on our mailing list. They were mailed ahead of this call. They'll be available in our repo under meeting minutes, and they will be available if you just email me and say, Shane, help. The security spec is something that is brand new. So why are we looking at updates to that? Well, because people had ideas. So of course we look at the ideas. It doesn't mean we come to market immediately with them, but we are an open standard development project. So we actually had a ton of ideas from JTC1 Working Group Subcommittee 27, ICT Security. We showed them what we were going into the past transposition process with as a courtesy and to get their notes. Does it align? So we asked them for a general comment, does this align what you're doing? And we welcomed editorials to help make sure that our language looked good for them. They sent us a note saying basically, yes, that's nice, fits. Here's some editorial, and here's a ton of scope suggestions. Now, obviously, we had completed our de facto standard. We weren't going to rescope that version. So we said to them, we'll put it into the next update consideration. So we kicked off that process early. We have been looking at the security spec update concepts for a while, and we summarized where we got to and put it in front of the steering committee. You can see what that was on this slide. You can see the current version of the security spec and the second generation draft. and sending it to the steering committee doesn't mean it's finished. It means the draft is finished. And now the steering committee will look at it, just like license compliance, and they did so. Here is their feedback, and this is the first time this feedback is being brought to the community. I wanted to do it on this call because this is our official biweekly specification development call. So the steering committee, by and large, liked what we're doing. They said that the proposed updates seem reasonable. However, the steering committee did think that at this stage, as a mature market-moving project, we probably want a longer period for public comments and freeze. By that, they're referring to, and I'm just going to see if I can pull this up on the screen for your convenience. They're referring to the length of time we take when we say, I think this spec is done. How do we go with that? Where do we go next? So on our website under the FAQ, we currently, when we think, oh, maybe we'll update this, and the steering committee is relatively likely to have to vote yay or nay to a formal new standard, we have a public comments period of 6 weeks, and we have a freeze period of 2 weeks. Okay, so that's what we currently have, 6 weeks and 2 weeks, public comments and freeze period. So in looking at the proposed updates, the steering committee said these proposed updates look all right. The guidance we want to give you is that we want to change the project's public comment and freeze periods. Because we're having a large market impact, we want to make sure more people have a chance to comment on that. So the steering committee minutes will show that they're interested in having a 6-month public comment period and a 3-month freeze period. So that would imply that before we formally take the proposed updates back to the steering committee for their formal vote, yes or no, we will open a public comment period for 6 months, and that will be advertised extensively inside and outside the OpenChain community to try to give as many organizations involved in the supply chain as possible a chance to look and comment before we lock down a change. Then the freeze period will run for 3 months, and once again, that will give people a chance to not comment at this point, but double check and red flag anything they think is definitely not good. The steering committee also noted that as a rule of thumb, they don't want to update our standards too often. And it's not formally decided yet as a rule, but as a rule of thumb, as a guidance. The original 5-year update cycle that has been a rule of thumb for a long time has been reiterated as they think it's suitable for the license compliance spec, and therefore it sounds most likely that an approved formal update to the license compliance spec in ISO would be in 2025. So they want us to run a public comment period for 6 months in 2024 for 3 months and then send it to them for a vote about whether it goes to ISO as an update to 5230. So that would mean that ISO 5230:2020 would then be superseded by ISO 5230:2025. It is not decided yet. It might need an update sooner because the market has been changing rapidly. There are a lot of notes and memos about security, and the first iteration of the standard was always designed to be a starting point rather than an end point. So while the 5-year cycle looks suitable for the mature license compliance standard, because of the unique market situation, we might iterate more quickly on security. But again, they want that longer freeze period, so 6 months, they want that longer comments period, 6 months, and then the longer freeze period, 3 months. Standards then, the steering committee is positive the community's changes are well received. Though they want to make sure more people have a chance to comment, and then more people, yet again, have a chance to review and red flag before we go to market. The 5-year rule of thumb on updates is likely to apply to their decision for license compliance, implying the update that we have today and potential adjustments in the public comment period will likely come to market in 2025. The security standard may be sooner. It will get the same comments and freeze period, and then we'll see where we're at. The most important point to take away from this, and I want to make this very clear, the community did an excellent update. We ran a process over 1 year, and we resolved them into the document in a way that did not concern many people who are extremely experienced in standardization. Our open development process worked. Nice, good, excellent. Well done all, and especially to our co-chairs. So Christopher Wood from Lockheed Martin and Helio from Cariad. Standardization has a long tail, and it's going to be quite something when we do update these ISOs. Will affect companies for 5 and 10 and 15 years ahead. So our work already done has taken us a long way into building the future. The work to come will be about looking at unclosed comments again and making sure more voices can be heard before we do the formal update. I want to check now if anyone has any comments or questions. If there's no comments or questions, then that's it on the formal side. We're on to the any other business side. And I did have an any other business item to bring. I just wanted to note that we had an awesome Open Compliance Summit. The Open Compliance Summit took place, my goodness, was it only 2 weeks ago, I think, in in Japan. And it was a very big event. A lot of things happened. Actually, I want to add these slides to our meeting because why not? I'm going to pull them out now and copy paste. Give me one single moment. Now, let me show you this. Why is it not pasting? Yep, here we go. The Open Compliance Summit took place in early December in Tokyo. We had some sponsors, though this is not an expensive conference. It's 100 people in a room in a workshop style. You know, quite frankly, the Open Compliance Summit in 2022, the reboot after COVID, wasn't an amazing a chance for international collaboration. It was a one-day event and mostly Japanese attendees. A lot of people couldn't travel, and a lot of travel budgets were gone. So we wanted to retake global leadership in open source legal events this year. And we were very happy. We had what we like to call our buffer zone of registrants. We allow about 100 people in. We found that if you allow maximum 120 to register, then you average 100 in the room. So we registered 119. We had 4 canceled. 22.7% of the people registered were speakers or panelists. I did say workshop in its field. And we had representation from countries and regions around the world. Some regional activity was presented for the first time. Some countries sent large delegations. It was very useful. It was our most international event by far. Big call out to the Chinese delegation and the Koreans. We had a lot of people come. And we had a bunch of people come from places like North America and Europe, including people from new industries. For instance, the insurance industry turned up. And we had a gentleman called Lewis take the stage and explain how they price out risk for open source in the market. With the ISO standards in play, we're really formalizing this field. 5230 for license compliance, 18974 security assurance. We've got 5962 for software bill of materials over at the SPDX project. The field is very different now to what it was 10 years ago. You can check the full schedule at this QR code, but I do have a couple of tastes of it in the slides ahead. For instance, day one, we had Dirk Hondale come and give us a 20-year context. We had David Marr from Qualcomm arrive. and talk about the future in AI compliance and signal the new AI compliance study group in OpenChain. We had pure play with Jimmy from Ericsson talking about, do you speak ISO? How do you talk to the IP orgs? We had really cool presentation from Bloomberg who were talking about from their optic, how do they manage supply chain risk as a major company doing software around the world? Some of the things out there I think are items that are must have, but very much up for debate around implementation. For instance, maturity models. And this is something we're going to have a webinar on very soon. And from Orcro, Mary Wang from Volvo, Stephen Pollard from Artec, and Lewis Pearl from Lockton. Lockton is the insurance provider, took the stage on a lengthy panel about how maturity modeling can be done. And Andrew actually has a draft maturity model that he's interested in contributing to the OpenChain reference library. And so on and so forth. You get the idea. Day 2 was equally busy. Not only presentations and panels, but rather exciting, I think, for those who wanted to take a breath and do something practical. In the afternoon at 3 p.m., we had a technical presentation, which was Jeff Shapiro, who does compliance for the Linux Foundation, talking about how, in practical terms, he automates compliance for an org like this. Anyway, if you weren't there, I hope you can come next year. This is a presentation zone, a discussion zone, a networking zone for high-level people, executives like our final keynote on day 2 in Seng Om, the person who is responsible for being above their open source work and facilitating the freedom of open source teams and OSPOs to get stuff done. With a relatively small number, 100 people, high level in one room, a lot is shared, a lot is done, and it's I think a positive environment. We had plenty of stories, plenty of laughs, and plenty of insight. I do want to highlight that, for instance, we had King Gao from Huawei take the stage as a keynote on day 2, and he's talking about Open Euler. It's an operating system in China positioned, this is a very rough way of saying it, but positioned as something you would use instead of Android, for example. It's able to work on everything from IoT to data center devices. Open Euler now has over 30% of the market in China. It's the most popular operating system in China. And it's a huge community. There's 16,000 developers on this. Huawei is the originator of Open Euler, but they already only contribute 40% of the code an ecosystem has built. So it's very cool to have someone like King take the stage and explain Open Euler. And it's something that's very directly working with our standards. Open Euler is ISO 5230 conformant, and they're adopting 18974 for security. So we have this like new emerging stuff using standards coming to market, being explained in front of the audience, which is, people who are also doing the business process management. Oops, it is very positive, and I do hope to see you there next year. I think you will like it. And there I stop my any other business item and check if you have one. It's the end of the year. Is there something you'd like to say about what we've done in the project, what you're doing that we should pay attention to? All right. If there is no any other business, then we are moving to the close of the meeting. And I'm sorry about that because I just saw Jacob dialed in. Jacob, just for your reference, I have got the slides that will be sent as a catch-up to the mailing list, but the very short version is, ISO 18974 is available for sale on the ISO website. You can also get it for free on our website. The fact ISO added it to their store will trigger this week our ISO publication PR. And that will be something that I think will get a bunch of attention as we close for the year. The steering committee had a look at our proposed future updates to the standards. They liked them, but they want a longer public comment period and freeze period than we've used previously. Because our standards are market moving, they want to give more people in the market a chance to realize this is happening and to step in. But they like all of the changes proposed thus far, and they thought it was good work. It looks like, all things being well, we'll have a 6-month comment period, 3-month freeze period, then steering committee will formally vote on the updates or guidance. It looks like they're interested in having 5230 formally updated in 2025, so that's a 5-year update cadence. Security assurance, maybe it won't be stuck to a 5-year cadence, but they want to run it through the comment and freeze period and then think about where we go next with the suggested updates. Because 18974, we don't want to enter a situation where people are confused if they should adopt it or wait. Is it updating next year? Is it pointless to adopt it now? We want to make sure that doesn't become a market confusion. And then I was just highlighting that the Open Compliance Summit was really cool. And we had just a ton of great talks from people all over the world. Highly recommended to come next year. And please do send in your registration requests when the 2024 website goes live. Yeah, that was condensed, but that's roughly it. That's roughly what happened. And we do have a big year ahead. As we close the meeting, I'll note that we have 2 ISO standards in play. We have incredible market traction. We have extremely fast-growing new technologies like OpenEuler, publicly using our ISO standards. And we have the support of major ecosystem players like PwC, Deloitte, and many others going to their customer bases and saying these ISO standards are a good idea. We have the support of major user companies like Sony, Toyota, Honda, going to their supply chain and saying use this standard. So we have a great opportunity and a great responsibility going into 2024 to continue to be a positive impact. One thing I like about our community is that their ideas, and they don't feel they have to be a board member. They don't feel they have to be from a big org. They can just share their ideas. Second thing I like is that we are providing a service to people who might not have resources. Smallest company in the world can come to our website and get everything they need to self-certify to ISO 5230 or 18974. And that's because the community built it for them for free. I like that. And on that note, well done all. We're the most open sourcey, effective business process management thingy in the world, as far as I can tell. And that's all because of you. We're going to be back next year. It will be beautiful to have a holiday for a week or two. Let's make the most of it. But when we do come back in January, let's try and hit the ground running. I think we're going to have a bunch of small companies in new markets. We have to consider, how do we help them? Like the security standard. What happens when a company in somewhere like rural Japan with 50 employees suddenly gets a memo saying that hypothetically, a company like Toyota or Sony now wants you to use the security standard. And they go, oh my God, and Google it. What do we need to have on our website so that they find something and go, it's okay, we can get this done? I think that's our challenge next year. And let's use it as an opportunity to help people, to make new friends, to do something good. This is a heck of a community. We have great people, and I think we're doing something positive for the whole ecosystem. Well done, all. Take care. Stay healthy. Stay well. Don't get up to too much trouble. Don't eat too much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Same to you. I'm looking forward to visiting you soon in Taipei. I probably will in very early January at the latest. Let's go for spicy beef noodles.
Of course. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, SC. It was so good to see you in the Open Compliance Summit as well. Jeff, maybe we can bring you over next year for a keynote. I hope so.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. That's why I was joining tonight, to hear the kind of the overview of your experiences there. It was great to see. So
Oh,
thank you,
yeah.
Shane, for and everyone else. It was great to see the work come out this year everything.
Thank you. And I'm very serious. Let's sync up about that keynote. We have the Open Compliance Summit, but we've just started another discussion, and I didn't put it on the slides because it's nebulous. We're saying, what if we have something for Asia? What if we have one in China? What if we do something in Seoul? So maybe in the middle of the year, we'll have an event in China, maybe in Beijing, or maybe in Seoul for Korea. So there might be two opportunities where I can drag you to Asia and force you to meet nice people and eat great food.
That would be great. I'll get my Duolingo started. So thank you, Shane, and have a great new year. Thanks for
Take
everything.
care. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you all. Goodbye.